And hi, this is Spike Robinson with my co-host Monia, and we're going to be starting a series on the Culty Geek, that is cultic or coercive interactions in various geek properties. And today we're looking at Trekkies. Now, I'm going to start right away and say that yes, they're a cult, but no, they're not a destructive cult. That is, they have all the markers for the unevil definition of cult. That is, they gather around a stated purpose. They have a joint purpose that they all believe in, a vision that they all believe in, but I don't see any systemic abuse happening. I looked, believe me, I looked. I did not see any systemic abuse. I did not see any systemic coercion, and it seemed like there was also room for disagreement, dissent, and even people saying like, well, you want to start with that scene in Trekkie 2, where there's that one woman who went to the Whitewater hearings in her uniform. You knew the one I was doing immediately, right? Yeah.
Barbara Adams.
Thank you.
Adams. Yes.
Yeah. And I'll put a pic of her up on the screen.
Yeah, so. Who was an alternate juror, which I'm not sure exactly what that means, technically speaking. But yeah, she was an alternate juror and wore her
Starfleet uniform.
And she did make sure to specify, and this was actually my question when I saw her, is that, well, you're not actually a commander in Starfleet because it's not part of the real universe.
But she's a commander in the
specific organization, yes.
Yeah, the civic organization, which does some impressive charity work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are Klingons that play bat-lit hockey and raise money for cancer for kids.
Yeah.
So that unlike certain groups we know of, Scientology, that pretend to raise money and be charities, Barbara Adams, did you say?
Mm-hmm.
And she was, an alternate juror, but they got her in a room with a bunch of other people saying that this wasn't a good idea, and they were having a respectful discussion. The movie we're referring to is Trekkies 2.
Mm-hmm.
For this, we watched, Monia watched Trekkies 1 and 2. I was not able to find Trekkies 1, but I watched it several years ago, and then I watched Trekkies 2, both by the delightful Roger Nygaard, who has been interviewed elsewhere on this channel.
And Trekkies 2 was very much more about the fan community and the disagreements, because I think there was a lot of fans in it that were saying, like, I can't believe you used the word Trekkies. That's an insult.
And you represented us by all these weirdos rather than here's who we are. And it seems that the whole thing as an organization is really not an organization. It's several different organizations under an umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't really say that. I'm sure somewhere there's probably a small chapter somewhere that is its own little cult, people being what they are. But I don't think it's endemic to the fanhood. I really don't.
No, I don't think so. It's very, I did wonder about that when you saw them at the cons and everything. And I'm like, I wonder which clusters of these people are running around. Just like,
it's worse than
I know they're there, I'm like, yes, everyone's so happy. And I'm like, I know that because if you go to an event, like for me, it would have been concerts and stuff like that. You do, sometimes if a lot of things are happening, you do feel kind of like, where are the enemies? But overall, you're like, yeah, you're just elated to be there, and you don't really think about,
that's what we call in the biz a peak experience. And in a destructive cult, that peak experience would be used to draw people in and get them to pay more money or get them to sell to other people. Like in a multi-level marketing, the conventions are used to hype people up and then get them to commit to selling more and more and more stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas it seems here, it's just a good place to get together. What really got me right here was the one in the Balkans. And it was the first conference in the Balkans of Trekkies. And yes, that guy in Portugal, there was one scene with a guy in Portugal who was like, welcome to my room and I shall show you. He struck me as a little creepy.
Well, what I found interesting was that there was one woman in the first one, and I don't know if she was featured in the second one at all, but she called herself a Spinerfem.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
She wasn't in the second one.
Yeah, and she had a website and, took a brand break and all of that stuff. And I saw online there were some people being like, she looked like a real crazy. And I was like, I don't know, she seemed completely harmless to me. And like, she could have some hidden motives, and that could just be her normal facade. But to me, I'm like, there was nothing about what she's doing that sounds strange. We all have run websites. Yeah, all of us.
It was said a couple different ways in Trekkers 2 or Trekkies 2 was, if they lose touch with reality, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
But if they're in touch with themselves, with their own persona, then there's a problem. But if they're using it to augment their persona, because there's a lot of things. I'm a Trekkie. In fact, we were discussing before we started taping that I have been tearing my whole house apart looking for my Trek communicator badge. I was not able to find it.
I think this means, though, that you're not actually a good fan. Or should we say you're not a Trekkie at all?
So all the DVDs of Voyager, Enterprise, the original communicator box of the original series.
No, one mistake is all, and then you're out.
The fact that I was watching it in diapers with my father in 1972.
No. No, this is what it would be like if it was more destructive, for sure. It would be like, you can't, you're not representing it every
second. But the thing is, I have loved the show. I have enjoyed the show. I've never been to a convention, but that's because I live in Vermont. We don't get a lot of stuff in Vermont.
I kept thinking in the second one as well, because they introduced a lot of people with their families and with the kids being Trekkies, and I was like, this could also be a bit shady. But so I don't know. They had that woman who had a junior daughter who was right in it with mom, and then the older daughter was like, well, it's not my thing. And yet she's not like shunning her daughter for not being into Trek. It's just a younger daughter is doing it because she's at the age that she wants to do everything that mommy does. Now, whether she takes that and turns it into a lifetime love is up to her. Obviously the older daughter hasn't. I did worry a bit about the dentist in the first one, the Trekkie dentist in the first one. The dentist was interesting because I just kept wondering about how they cleaned all of that, because I was like, this is very messy for a dentist office. Think of that. Because if it's like wallpaper, or like the people who had the bathroom tiles, I'm like, that looks great. It's very classy. Just get like a little touch there. I'm like, yeah, you could have a whole dentist office decorated in that way. But there was a lot of items with small parts, and I'm like, I'm just seeing dust everywhere. And just
I didn't even think of that.
And that's when I was like, are you maintaining anything with that?
Well, the one thing that bugged me was the one hygienist who had been pressured to dress in the uniform. But then I thought of it as, what if it's a theme restaurant? What if I decided to work at a theme restaurant and the theme was like Westerns? I would probably be required to wear a cowboy hat. And I would say it all depends on whether or not my employer was going to buy the cowboy hat for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. I thought about that one as well, but I kind of wondered. I mean, people take jobs that they might not necessarily want, but I'm assuming it was a part of the deal. Like,
yeah, I don't know
like,
what
this is our uniform. She's like, okay, I'll take the job, but I won't wear the uniform. It's like,
yeah, but she did eventually do it.
yeah, and
just because
I
of
think
social pressure. But was it destructive? Was it abusive social pressure? I don't know, because I'm not in that situation.
Yeah. And it's hard to know, especially, and I feel like I'm trying to think of my dentist. I feel like they all wear like the scrubs.
Yeah. The scrubs and the masks and I
looked at the receptionist and I looked at the way, and it didn't look like a standard suit. It just looked much more comfortable. So I was like, I don't know that I would mind. It actually looks quite comfortable.
Yeah, and if that's the theme of the place, and that's what some of the patients are there for. The one thing that I did think was disturbing, and this is more a personal problem rather than a group problem, was who's the guy who was the original 15-year-old geek in the first one, and then later on
Gabe, the graphic designer. Gabe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he started out as this geek, but now what does he do?
Mullet.
He designs ships for movies and matte paintings for sci-fi productions. And that would not have happened had he not been a real hardcore Trekkie or Trekker or whatever the heck it is. Yeah. Now, his father, however, who said that he lost his job and his girlfriend and spent all his rent money on helping his son out. Now, excellent fatherhood goals, getting into whatever your son's doing and helping him do it. But when it comes at your job, your housing, and your relationship, I think that guy is the one who's gone a little too far.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that one scared me. But the other one was, you see, and this is the big thing is, to me, in the culty world, it's not the weird stuff. For Scientology, it's not that they supposedly believe in Xenu and the volcano and the alien story. Or in Christianity, it's not because there's this carpenter's son who can walk on water and turn water into wine. It's whether or not there's a lot of control, whether or not you can talk to somebody if you decide no longer to believe. It's whether or not you can know the high level beliefs without paying a shiffer load of money. So the Trekkies are weird. They dress up in costumes and, I do have a tribble around here too. I wanted to do the tribble fights.
I like the tribble that they had in the movie. It was cute, but
well, I have one that actually, when you shook, it went, but then the batteries went kind of went.
Oh my god, I love that.
yeah, and then I had a couple just fuzzy tribbles that are, but so they dress up weird. But are they being forced? Are they being cajoled? Is it that, say, your Klingon hockey batlet league? If you suddenly decide not to dress up as a Klingon and play hockey with batlets, are they going to no longer talk to you and demonize you once you get out?
It's interesting because in other fandoms I've been in, it's always been like, if you sort of phase out, which often happens, sometimes you might remain friends with people, but you might not be doing the same things, because if your primary activity has just been around that, but there's still no shame or anything like that, which is a very different.
Yeah, there's a total difference between drifting away and, no, she doesn't believe anymore.
Yeah, which is what happened with my last one. But which is where you're like, oh my God, what's happening?
I couldn't find any examples of that. And I searched in the movie also. I mean, I did a deep dive search online, which is never a comfortable thing to do.
No, I mean, I wonder whether those things would have happened in more individuated. I don't know if that's a word that can be used in
Well,
this situation.
individuated is a word.
Yeah, like situations where it's like, there's a mailing list, and then there's something happens over there, but you wouldn't necessarily find it, now 20 years later. So there could have been isolated instances like that. And even when you think back about like, oh, what happened on LiveJournal, like I don't know if I could find, unless I went to like
the Wayback Machine.
Well, I don't know if I would even know where to look, but there's like there used to be those wank journals and stuff like that, like Fandom Wank, and that would archive things. So maybe there could be stuff there.
I mean,
but the new Trek, I would suspect might have more issues because it arose around this time with the social media like insanity.
So there might be a few live journal groups, like for instance, I used to read some of the Kirk Spock slash. It wasn't very well written, most of it, but whereas I used to write as should I give out my pen name?
If you want. Sure. I mean, you can always like mute it.
I can always beep it out. I'm the one who's editing. I've got the power. But I used to write as Gemsbird on LiveJournal, Holmes Watson slash, which was usually much better written than your average slash, because the fandom itself was reading 19th century whatever. So we were the best. My best.
Oh, I've heard these claims before, but it's whatever. Yeah, that's fine. Each fandom thinks no, it's but you can notice things. You can notice things, and then you notice. It is interesting because it is a moving environment. Like it's a constantly evolving. So you have the different archives, and then you'll notice a specific thing in those archives, and then once they start merging, and then you're like, oh no, those people are migrating over here, and now now we have to scroll through all the bad stuff. And
but so there might have been a couple pockets of LiveJournal doing Trek stories that might have been, but I honestly don't think it's systemic, mainly because for a couple of reasons. Number one is that there's no one overarching organization. So it's like say like Christianity or Islam or Judaism. There's no one overarching organization. You've got the Wahhabis over here, the Sunnis over here, you've got various different people with way different beliefs, like my neighbors down the street who you only know about it because you offer them no, it's Ramadan, I'm fasting, or the people who are wearing, or like, this is Burlington, so we get a lot of cultural mixing. So I've seen a lady during Christmas time wearing the Hador and reindeer antlers.
I feel like reindeer antlers would be pretty heavy, but you know what?
Well, no, I mean the little felt ones that you can get.
I'm less impressed. I was like, wow, that's going
no, the little felt ones.
That's like building neck strength. Like, I'm like, that sounds like a great exercise.
Well, she could hide her neck brace under the Hador. The Hador, of course, being that one outfit that just shows the face, which I've been tempted to wear just on a bad hair day. But in any case, so you can't say that all of Islam is a cult, although some people like to think that, and it's like, no, sorry, only tiny little percentage of this one group over here.
Yeah.
Any case, or it could be a situation like, I'm going to be really unpopular here, AA, where the overarching group has one belief, the belief in a higher power that could be used to be abusive, but not all the chapters are abusive. And it depends on which chapter you go to.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's an abusive cult.
Yes. And I would say
Girl Scouts, there are troops that are abusive, and there are troops that are wonderful. So that, or like I've seen the United Gymnastics, they had a bit of a problem with abuse of the girls. That was Oh, who was the guy? It was a doctor.
Larry Nasser.
Thank you. I'm sorry, the name again?
Larry Nasser.
Nasser.
Nasser, I think is how you say it.
I wrote a whole article on him and I still can't remember his name. You see, you've still got memory going.
Oh, this is like me functioning with one brain cell, really. I feel like my memory has gotten so much worse, but yeah, I still have some.
Wait 20 years. Wait 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, Larry Nasser, and that is definitely to me a huge one, where because it was ongoing and they knew about it and they covered it up and they knew about it and they were like, well,
and they covered it up and the girl was like, well, maybe you just don't know appropriate touching. It's like, sorry, if you've got that little doesn't feel good, there's a reason for that. We have these.
Yeah, but he's a doctor.
Yeah, but he's a doctor. No, excuse me, no.
But just in general, I didn't realize how well. I knew that gymnastics. Gymnastics is the word for the overarching thing, right? Gymnastics in itself.
Yeah, United States Gymnastics Association. And once that came out, though, I will give them kudos that they finally addressed it and finally said, okay, we're going to put these safeguards in place. Mm-hmm. And could you say too little too late? Well, I'd say that it's humanity learning that this stuff ain't right.
Yeah.
Because when I was a kid, it certainly wasn't talked about. We certainly, if it was something, you just did not talk about it. Mm. And also things like, if a woman was beaten by her husband, well, that was still quite, you make it work. Mm. Any hoodle. But getting back to the Trek, what I see is, yes, cult, no, not abusive cult.
Yeah.
Because cult, the definition is a group of people gathered around one ideal and following. And also the other reason I don't think that it's destructive is the one catchphrase, infinite diversity in infinite combination. Now, lots of destructive cults have good little catchphrases like that if they followed would make them not less of a cult, but they don't follow, they just advertise it.
Yeah, that's I'm familiar with that. That happens a lot in fandom, especially.
Yeah.
But
an example?
Well, I can say from mine, I'll just say the slogan that is being used as an opposite, and if people are familiar with it, they'll know. Treat people with kindness is one that was in mine. And if you saw that on someone's bio, you knew that they were a bully, basically, because there's the only way and it's like, it took like over a year to be like, oh no, this literally is just a cover for them to be as big as assholes that they want to be. But they have a shirt that says that. Mm-hmm. And it says in their bio that they treat people with kindness. So if they're mean to someone, they don't deserve to be treated with kindness. So like it's a very selective. Yeah. But that's what I noticed in Trekkies too, as well, with the Trekkers who were like, we're not Trekkies. And they seem to like not care about the diversity. They're like, no, we don't like that stuff and you make us look bad.
Yeah, I went through and I found several conflicting definitions between Trekkies and Trekkers. And I'm not sure which one is which.
Oh, I feel like this is probably
in the comments below, Trekkie or Trekker. There we go. There's our clickbait.
I just feel like it's the kind of thing that there will never be a complete unity about. It's kind of like when I was in emo fandom and we were just like, fine, we'll call ourselves emos, but it's not actually emo because emo is actually a completely different genre and has nothing, like that whole thing. But then you're like, fine, whatever.
But I will say the fact that there isn't a set definition also makes it a little less culty.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
culty.
Yeah,
because we got to define between cult and destructive cult.
Mm-hmm. Mhm.
And I would say it's a little less destructive culty because there is no hard and set, this is it, and everybody has their own opinion. And what I saw in Trekkie 2 was a lot of respectful disagreement.
Yeah.
One of John's catchphrases is to disagree agreeably.
Like that.
A friend of the channel, Chris Shelton, who's another ex-Scientologist, wonderful fella, love him like a brother. He and I have some disagreements over some various things, various political things, but I will mention like pineapple on pizza. He thinks it's a horrible thing. I love me some pineapple on pizza.
That just makes me think, just reminds me, I don't know if you know this, but Hawaiian pizza is actually Canadian.
I'd heard that.
And that's just because of the pineapple that I remember this. But yeah, and I was like, wow, we did this.
I just barely heard that too on because I watch a lot of YouTube just for entertainment. Unfortunately,
me too, yeah.
With the popularity of culty stuff going on, so often my listening turns into work.
Yeah.
But there is some loaded language, but it's not loaded language that keeps people out. And there's no overarching authority figure saying you must do this. And there seems to be a lot of acceptance, particularly for the LGBT community.
I thought the acceptance shown was really nice. Like, yeah, it was just so like, and even the families, that there was only the one daughter who was like, I'm not into this, where I was just feeling like, I remember being a kid and just being like, oh my God, I want nothing to do with what you're doing right now.
But at the same time, the mother was still accepting of this.
Oh yeah. I loved her attitude. It was great because she was just like, the whole thing with like, oh, I wanted to say she's dead, Jim, on her gravestone. I was like, this was great.
She's dead, Jim.
Yeah.
I could see.
It was great. Yeah. I was like, that's amazing. And she was like, yeah, I'm happy to be an eccentric adult. I'm like, yeah, exactly. That is perfectly right. And it's like, it's not preaching to others either, is part of what I find. Like, yes, they're not trying to be like, no, I have to go convince everyone else.
Yeah, you don't
and all that. Yeah.
Your doorstep telling you that your fandom is bad. And then there was there was one scene in the Trekkies 2 where it was Barbara again talking with her coworker about which was better, Star Wars or Star Trek. And gosh, apologies to all the Star Wars fans, including my husband, but the reason that he gave for Star Wars being better were so militaristic and jingoistic and
I wrote it down.
Violence.
Laser fights.
Cool.
Laser fights. And there's no reason to think about it.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that and I thought that's really interesting because I actually have no doubt that there are Star Trek fans that probably think that of Star Trek themselves, that they're like, oh, I don't have to think about it. They're just presenting everything for me. Like, they don't really have to think like who's bad, who's good. Like, I'm sure there are people who think that way as well. And I know Star Wars fans who see Star Wars as more detailed and think of things. So I think it's just like, you really just see the different perspectives. So like, yeah, no wonder you guys are not on the same page with these because you're seeing it in completely different ways.
It's detailing. It's the different fan. It's the individual. And I think any abuse that happens, but once again, viewers, link it please in the description below. If you have you been abused by a Star Trek fan or a fan or a group? I'd like to hear about it because I'd like to know exactly how it was done, but it really does not seem to be systemic.
No, looking from the outside, it looks fine. I did wonder a bit, like the Brazilian fan, and he mentioned, right, I think I wrote down his exact title or something. The commander.
I felt like she's going into his apartment, glad that she has a camera crew with her because
the commander of the International Federation of Trekkies, and they were like Region 30, and he was, so he was in charge. And I was thinking, like, it's interesting, but then you could always be like, what if the wrong person gets the commandership, right? And I just, to me, because my fandom experiences were never this structured with groups, it just made me think of couch surfing, which was an online, I think it still exists. I don't know why I said was. Couchsurfing.org, I think. Okay, yeah. Couch surfing is pre-Airbnb. It's free. It's when you would go and get to couch surf, like, it's called couch surfing because the idea is you get to crash in someone's house.
And this is organized online now?
Yeah, it's been online for a while. I used to use it for traveling and I hosted lots of people. Yeah. And it's like one of those things where it's like, it has to be free. Like there's no payment allowed. But then Airbnb started to come up and people were like greedy. They were like, but I can make money off it. Why would I host people for free?
Well, anyway. Pre-internet, couch surfing was actually used as, I think, a derogatory term for someone who could not be responsible.
Right. Yeah. Oh, interesting.
And would go around to various different friends until that friend finally said enough, kick you.
So funny. Yeah, well, they reclaimed it. They reclaimed the term, and that had more of a community vibe. And I do wonder if someone who was determined as an ambassador of whatever city is like a bad host, because that's definitely a community where the abuse was kind of like hidden away a bit. Like you went into forums.
Get victims for some bizarre basement torture sort of deal, you know.
Well, I don't think that happened. Well, that could have happened, actually. I shouldn't say anything. Because I don't keep track of all that.
Much true crime now. That hasn't happened at least once.
Yeah, I think when I was looking around on forums, I read that there was like a few Italian hosts that were like, avoid this one, and like this person is sketchy, blah, blah, blah. And there has been now a podcast about someone who was, I think, in Italy, and I think was a police officer or had connections. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's the guy that was being warned about on the forum.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So I'm like, well, at least someone is talking about it now. So like,
with love to all of our Italian friends, you know, because
this is just one. It really was that specific guy. Yeah. Like they weren't like avoid Italy. They were like, if you're in whatever city it was he was in, like avoid this particular guy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No. I thought so. In the second, this is good. I'm surprised you haven't brought this guy up. The English guy who built his apartment like the inside of the ship.
I think that was therapy for him.
Oh yeah, for sure. My concern with that is that he blocked out the windows. I'm like, how could you do that? Like he's like, I blocked them out, and I'm like, how could you not include it somehow? And just
yeah, that kind of, I would be claustrophobic. I need windows. Like right in front of my computer here is a window onto a lovely locust grove. And
yeah, it's hard not having, because I have very few windows. I'm like, the idea of blocking out what's there, I'm like, you could easily have like a screen. But
he was blocked almost as if he was blocking out the whole world, not to cite somebody that I only saw in 5 minutes of footage.
Yeah.
But it did seem in the movie, he's talking about how he got a divorce and he was feeling very, very low and some dangerous thoughts. And he started working on this.
Yeah. And he said, I'm not sure if he said it sounds silly or ridiculous or whatever, but he sort of tried to downplay it and said, you know, I think Star Trek saved my life. And I'm just like, listen, you don't have to downplay that. That's like, that's very common for that kind of stuff. And like My Chemical Romance, their entire point when they formed the band was like, we want to save lives. It's like, this is like, I don't think anyone from Star Trek would be like, oh, loser. They'd be like, wow, that's amazing. Like, I'm so glad.
That one bit in Trekkies 1 with James Doohan talking
oh my God, that story.
Saying, I'm about to end it all. And he said, no, come and meet me at the convention. And every year she met him at the convention. And finally she had a master's degree in engineering or some such.
Yeah, she vanished. And he was just like, crap, I don't know how to even know what happened. And then years later, he got like a letter from her and saying like, yeah, that was so important. I have a master's in engineering now. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
That's fantastic.
Was that the guy who transitioned from the girl with the cat in the first video? Because there was it looked like it was the same last name, but I wasn't sure. The person with the scrub top and the cat, named after DeForest Kelley.
I'm not sure. So the
'Cause-
same one. Okay.
Yeah.
So not with the kitty that were.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. The
looked like it was
cats.
the last name, and I wasn't sure if it was younger brother or transitioned individual.
I'm not sure, actually. I was focusing on the cats a lot. Especially when it was like the fat cat is like, this cat has gained a lot of weight. I'm like, that's a very large cat. I'm like, this puffy cat, is he getting treats from wearing the suits, or is he, how are you doing, kitty?
Yeah.
But I kind of like, I mean, I actually have no idea. I'm sure we could look it up, but I do kind of like the idea that it would be like a family endeavor. Just like we just have like,
that's the thing.
we're just like it's a business that we're running. Because I'm like, yeah, Star Trek kitties, they're great.
One of the known XJW YouTubers, the lovely Susan Gaskin, is also a Star Trek fan, and she once sent me a wonderful picture of herself and her husband and her 2 kids.
Oh my God.
Met various was it Brent Spiner they met?
Oh wow.
It was, but they go to the conventions, or they did.
And they would all dress up.
They would dress up.
Oh, yeah. See, I don't know. There's just like, I think because I never had that with my family. If I see that with others, I'm like, wow.
It was something that she was never allowed to do in JW.
Yeah, of course not.
Whereas in Trek, there was like that Catholic priest. So he had his Catholic beliefs and his Trek beliefs, and he was able to keep both. And that's the thing. There were a lot of people that they could do this other thing too, and they could do Trek. With Scientology, with JWs, with all of your destructive groups or relationships, you can't have both. You can only have the group. The group subsumes your entire identity. And there's a lot, oh yeah, this is the point that I wandered off in a tangent, my bad, is that like with one person, there's many streams of identities. I'm a Trekkie, I'm a wife, I'm a musician, I'm a birdie mom, I'm an artist, I'm a video editor, I do this, I do that, all sorts of things, all sorts of streams of identity and different things that I do in my life. If I was in a destructive group, I would be only about that.
Yeah.
Like if I were in the cult of John Atack, I would only deal with John Atack all the time, which I don't. John's a friend, but he's not my be all and end all of everything.
That sounds healthy.
Parakeets, I've got it, or at least he says that. He makes me say that in between being locked in his basement. Nope, just kidding.
Now I'm like, what is the truth? I from what I understand, he's in a different country than you are.
Yeah, he's halfway across, all the way across the Atlantic. So I don't call it a pond. But getting back to the Trekkie, how much do you think there are people who actually do stalk Brent Spiner or do stalk the various actors? Patrick Stewart has talked about how being Captain Picard did actually keep him from some roles, although I think I'm not into the Marvel at all, but I mean, he got Charles Xavier, he's done other roles, but he's
iconic in X-Men. Like I think well, Star Trek is huge, but I think that was probably the role that I saw him in first. Like was like aware, of like, oh yeah, it's it. Like yeah, I was like, yeah.
Did you find any things where maybe somebody has been stalking, George Takei or Nichelle Nichols, or the fact that I know all their names? is a little scary.
Oh, is it? I knew those names too. I don't, I haven't found anything, but I do wonder how much of that is, I often wonder about the people that are like legitimate stalkers. How much are they within the fan community, and how much are they acting on their own, just like themselves? Because this is something that was discussed a lot in my fandom books as well, where people will use, is his name Mark David Chapman or the Lennon shooter?
I don't remember his name. I'll put it.
I think that's his name. I could be wrong. People
no.
will use him and be like, oh, well, he was a disgruntled fan and he went and shot him. And it's like, well, he wasn't actually, though. Like, he wasn't a fan, and he wasn't like he was a fan years ago. At that time, he wasn't. Like, it was a completely different thing. And it's like, okay, so this isn't someone who exists within a fan community and is
no.
But there are people who exist in fan communities who do this in order to feed information to the rest of the group. So I think there still exists that boundary crossing behavior, but it might exist for different reasons and different. So I wonder about that. I have no doubt they exist, though, the Trek stalkers.
But also, I saw there was that whole montage in Trekkies too of how far is too far. And there were several different answers. No, we can't get too far. And then we're like, some of the people take it too far. And I would feel that in the wider community, there would be people going, okay, you're taking a little too far, that there would be a bit of, because there is no overarching organization, so they could creep under the radar, but also the people around them would probably go, okay, dude, chill.
Daddy, chill.
Yeah, it's part of this is also something they mentioned in the literature, where it's like it becomes the groups, because there's an awareness that this is a community, and communities police themselves. I don't know if that's the right word, but sort of like try to rein in, Yeah, it's like the guy, and I think he was in Trekkies too, where he said like, yeah, we have people who are a bit too much, but they're part of the family. They're like the too much uncle, and you just, you deal with them. And I'm like, yeah, that's the attitude to have, because that's how you sort of like, don't kick them out so that they go like even more off the edge, and then now you have a problem and you have two oppositions.
Yeah, it does feel like I've never been to a convention, but that's because, like I said, I've never been able to go to one. Maybe my husband and I have been talking, maybe we want to go to one sometime, but it would be really, really hard to find one, drive, especially now, find one, drive all the way down or up or whatever. I
mean, yeah, we have two, I think. We have Fan Expo. Do we have Comic Con as well? I'm sure there's some near you. There has to be. But yeah, that was what's interesting, I guess, because they do go to a lot of smaller places in the second movie. But I think it was when the people were dressed up as Klingons and going to the fast food restaurant. And I think it was Denise Crosby that asked the guy's like, do you often serve Klingons? And it's like, yeah. And I'm like, is this supposed to be weird? Maybe it's because I live in a big city that has Fan Expo. So I know, like, when you start seeing them running around, you're like, oh yeah, it's August. Makes sense. This is Fan Expo time,
I do think, the bands. I really could not stand any of the Klingon punk bands. Wally and I were just going, oh.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't my type of music, but I love that they existed. I was like, that's great. And maybe it's because, I saw nothing weird. I mean, it looked like it would probably be very hot to perform in those outfits. But there's plenty of bands who dress up,
Oh, yeah, that's the whole punk ethos. But the folk stuff, I was very down when I was watching Star Trek, Trekkies too. And all I could think of while listening to all those folk people was, I have written so much more and better music than that. And yet they got a whole audience, and I can barely get 200 subscribers on my own YouTube channel. Link in the description.
Well, you can start writing filk and infiltrate get that audience.
Infiltrate them.
Oh shit.
Bad Spike, no biscuit. I'm sorry. That's the folk writer in me, is that, show, how many musicians it takes to turn a light bulb? 8, 1 to do and the other 7 to say they could have played it better.
I mean, fandom is a lot like this as well, too. It's like, and I kept thinking about this because fandom has been such a huge part of my life, where I'm like looking at the folk singers for examples. And I was like, I wonder if there's any folk singers at home sitting there like, God, you had to profile Brenda. Like, she plagiarized from me. Like, and like, I'm just like, I'm imagining the people being like, oh, it's that clique again. And now it sounds like I'm just
that
like,
part of me. It's so effing petty.
No, but I'm just picturing because, and to be clear, there's nothing in the film that suggests that any of these people are anything other than nice and decent. It's just me trying to imagine behind the scenes, and like, there's people, well, we all know this, so there's lots of people in my old fandom that don't like me because I was rejected. But like, they're, so I always assume like there's people, small disagreements here and there, and what's the reaction? Like,
because a lot of the time in Trekkers 2 or Trekkies 2, they were saying, God, the movie showed all these weirdos and they didn't
exactly
show her.
Yeah.
And what it really means is they didn't show me. So
that's definitely
understand, and I can relate, because sometimes I'm like that myself. It's my performer self. I want to be center stage. I want to be famous. Why are these other people getting all the gigs? And I have written filk, but it's culty filk.
Oh.
And I will leave a link in the description.
So is it folk then?
My playlist and my JW playlist. I have written songs about Scientology, or even taken new song, regular known songs, and written Scientology words to them.
Weird Al style.
Weird Al style, yes. Or I have also, I've written a really serious ballad called Just a Drop of Blood, about the fact that over 1,000 Jehovah's Witnesses die each year due to their blood transfusion rule.
Yeah.
1,000 a year. That's one Jonestown every year. And this is why I do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But so I wrote that. But my most popular song, you can have a pet tiger and you'll never grow old, but you gotta be loyal, gotta do everything you're told. Cult filk. Never even stepped inside a Kingdom Hall, but I know a lot of ex-JWs and I know a lot of ex-Scientologists.
Yeah.
And their fandom, it's not a fandom, but their groups are very enmeshed, especially since Leah Remini did her excellent show on ex-JWs. There's a lot, and so a lot of them cross-pollinate, because they see that even though one's a science fiction spaceship cult, and the other is supposedly a Christian group, there's a lot of similarities in as the levels of control, the disconnection / shunning, the way that it subsumes your whole life.
Yeah.
So that there's a lot of similarities between them. So they turn into their own little groups.
I mean, I feel like they work as a science fiction cult as well, because it's like it's the utopia, the utopia is coming, and like the whole process of like how we get to that utopia sounds like something that would be in a science fiction novel. It's a narrative that would fit in perfectly as
those
well.
Watercolor brochures always got me, because I always wanted a pet tiger. I really did. I always wanted a pet tiger.
Yeah.
And then
that's how they get that. Yeah, for sure.
You is like, oh, everybody of all races and colors, except that if you go back in their records, which if you're in the group, you cannot access anything less than 5 years ago. They actually very Orwellian-esque take away all the older stuff so that you cannot see, well, 5 years ago, they said this about blood. Now they're saying this. So
that's really disturbing.
Yeah. They actually tell their elders, seed this out, you can't go and see, or they keep in the back room and you can't access it. So that you can't see that pre-1924, they celebrated Christmas and birthdays. Or 24 is probably a loose year. I'd have to look up the exact year. There's a picture of the original leaders all gathered around a Christmas tree.
But do you think, here's the question, do you think that if they had access to that, do you think it would change anything? Or would it be seen just as like, we've gotten stricter because the times have gotten stranger? And
they have a saying called, what is it, growing light, or the light getting brighter? I forget, but that the idea is that the light is shining through from God and showing us just a little patch now, but in progressive years, it's been getting brighter so that we can see more and more and more. And that's what they're using as an excuse for their waffling between whether or not you can take blood fractions, whether or not women can wear this, whether or not a heart shape is demonic or okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about because I read a few books from I feel bad because I don't remember her name of this particular book, but I read Carolyn Jessup's 2 books, and then this other Rachel Jeffs, I think. Okay, I think that's her name.
Yeah. Oh, I
love her. And she was talking, her book explained a lot about how it became stricter, and it was I think I read them in a good order. I would recommend reading Carolyn Jessup's first because it happens before and you can sort of follow the chronology. Because she explained how things slowly got stricter and how people were just like, oh, well, we don't like it, but we'll do it. Okay, fine. Oh, no red. Okay, we can't even touch, and now we're people just did it,
I this is one thing that with my father, he doesn't believe that JWs are a cult because they had friends who were JWs. And I've tried to explain to him over the years that was 20 years ago when you were allowed to have friends outside the group. Now you can't.
I find that this holds true for so many things, though, that people don't realize things change over time. Because I've seen that as well, like just talking about, obviously you and John and Yuval and everyone has this understanding of social media and everything and how it's affecting us. But I remember telling people like, this is crazy. And they're like, well, no, we were fine with it. And people were like warning us about the internet in the 90s and we were fine. It's like, okay, but it's a completely different beast now than the 90s. Yeah. Like you have to recognize that. Evolution. It's a completely different situation than
evolution happens. People change, organizations change, the rules change, but in JW you can't look back. If you're inside, you can't look back and see that they didn't have this rule before.
No, and even and that's this is maybe like and this is what I see in my fandom too, where they just like erase, like change their mind overnight, and then like, no, we never said that. We never said that at all.
Trek, they have the whole library available. I didn't see any closed secrets. I didn't see any, well, you can, I mean, yes, it's changed and it's adapted, and now they've got how many different series out right now running?
I mean, there's a lot.
Discovery, Lower Decks, Picard.
There's a lot. I do wonder though, because, and maybe this is a topic for a whole separate discussion, but because you're mentioning that you were looking for abusive culty behavior for Trekkies / Trekkers / new Trek fans, whatever they want to call themselves, Spinerfems, whatever. Star Wars fans are a group that have been acknowledged to be quite abusive towards the people, at least, that are in the franchises, which is interesting.
Because of the way that they disappointed. And also I've seen that, yes, there were some fans that were very upset with, like, say, Discovery and where it went. But how they expressed that varies highly. And there might
yeah, and I don't even mean most recently, because I know a lot of people didn't like the latest movie. I think that's what I
well, we
understood.
do not talk about the odd-numbered Trek movies.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. That's a phrase that I've heard though in the fandom is.
Oh, interesting. We don't talk about this.
Because now Star Trek V, let's face it, there's only one scene that's worth it, and that's the camping scene at the beginning.
What am I trying? Oh yeah, I don't mean the most recent Star Wars kerfuffle, but like, because even before that, I remember when there were specific cast members that were targeted and ended up deleting their social media and stuff like that, which happened way before this latest movie. So it's a lot of.
Didn't the little boy who, it wasn't Christian Hayden, it was or Hayden Christian.
Oh, Jake something. Yes, I know who you're talking about. The tiny one. Yeah.
Who played Kid Darth Vader. Got a lot of hate, didn't he?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I remember that. I think his name is Jake something, but
that's the thing, is that nowadays with the internet, there is such an ability to get right to somebody if you know the right way to get to them. You can really get right to. This didn't happen pre-internet. You know, you could write a fan letter, but you had to stick it in an envelope, put postage on it, and send it to the TV studio.
And that's the way it was, and we liked it.
Well, we saw in Trekkies, they have a big pile of everything that they're getting. They had the big piles of mails and the crab screenplay.
Loved that. And the crab.
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, the crab was great.
That actually made me want to go out and buy some crab legs.
So you are just as sick as that person. Wow, I love the crab. Also, the crab is delicious. I worship the crab and it tastes great.
I am highly suggestible as to where food comes from. Notice the triple chin and the fluffing out. But I think I'm married 20 plus years. I don't care my body anymore, you know. I know my husband loves me no matter what, because he helped me set this thing up today. But I'm highly suggestible when it comes to food. I was watching a video about how a kid died of stomach cancer, and they weren't sure whether or not it was because he ate ramen noodles morning, noon, and night for about 18 years. And then he died of stomach cancer in his 20s.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was in Japan, I think. And all of a sudden, I needed ramen noodles. And I was upstairs. It was like 2:00 in the morning. I came downstairs and we didn't have any ramen noodles. What kind of kitchen doesn't have ramen noodles?
Mine doesn't either. So,
yeah. In any case, but yeah, so there might be small ones, and they might be fans who say, yeah, season 2 of Picard really stinks.
Yeah.
Or we really hate it when you killed off this captain in I have not even seen Star Trek Discovery.
Right. I remember that. That felt slightly manipulative, actually, but I don't think I saw any crazy overreactions, but that was interesting because they did advertise it and I'm like, when you do stuff like that, that is definitely manipulative. And you're trying to get people in and then be like, JK.
It definitely, and you know, I mean, I stopped watching Enterprise because it just didn't get to me. And Deep Space Nine, quite frankly, if I wanted a space opera about politics, I would watch Babylon 5. Thank you very much.
Battlestar Galactica for me.
Yeah, for me, the whole Trill thing just got the whole, and also I loved Odo as a shapeshifter when it was just him, but as soon as the whole Dominion Wars started, it was sorry, but
it's okay.
Voyager's my thing. I love Voyager.
Voyager is my thing too.
Yeah, she's my favorite captain. Janeway is my favorite captain. Kate Mulgrew. Have you ever seen her in anything else? She has,
I don't know,
episodes. She was in one episode of Murder, She Wrote. She was in a couple episodes of Cheers. She was in a whole bunch of them, and in every single one, she's the same character. She's this
so funny, in charge, confident, just like
exactly in charge, confident, very together woman.
Yeah.
As
a captain should be.
Okay. So, what were we talking about again?
Oh, just Trek, Trek stuff.
Okay, the the hatred of fans can get very, very harsh. But at the same time, you can always say to them, back up. This is a TV show. This is entertainment. And yes, it is a lifestyle for people. And I think it's all a matter of how into it you get and whether or not, like they said, and they said it over and over again, whether or not your whole personality is subsumed or is it something that you do for fun.
Yeah.
So cult, yes. Destructive? Nah.
Not overall, yeah.
Not overall, not endemic, not systemic.
Yeah.
No. I have a great time talking to you, and
thank you. You too.
we'll be talking to very later on. Maybe leave suggestions as to which cult geeky property you want us to do. I will do just about anything except for 50 Shades of Grey. Won't play that.
No, and that's a whole different discussion about which fan fictions come to the forefront and how, like, that's a completely different, like, beast.
Wasn't Twilight originally a fan fiction of 50 Shades of Grey?
No, the reverse.
Oh, the reverse.
50 Shades of Grey was a fan fiction of Twilight.
How does that work?
Well, there wasn't enough sex in Twilight, so.
But there's no, to my mind, there's no vampire except for a psychic vampire of that abusive guy in 50 Shades.
Yeah. Yeah, but they were just human. I think it's an AU where they're human AU. You've written fic. You know how this works.
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember that one disturbed person in our Sherlock Holmes and Watson group. Oh, it was the Jeeves Wooster group. She wrote her entire new character, Colin, and got very upset when people said, well, that's very nice, but we'd rather read about Bertie and Jeeves. And you've got it just Bertie and Colin. And she got very upset.
Oh, we had a similar, something similar.
That did not get into reading about her Mary Sue or Marty Sue, as it were. Marty Stew.
Marty Stew, yeah, that's
Marty
right.
Stew. And for those who don't know, Mary Sue is in self-insert of a character in fandoms, where you write yourself only bigger, badder, and everybody loves you.
Yeah, I think a good comparison to mainstream is a bit, Manic Pixie Dream Girls, although they aren't self-projections, but they basically embody what a Mary Sue is. It's someone that everyone falls in love with and who has all of these amazing characteristics and just, is so perfect, and then it's not a real character because it's just a character that's been created to receive, adoration. And that's how you notice, and you're like, who is this character?
I actually wrote one where Holmes and Watson were fighting against a Mary Sue, who, when she appeared, they would turn into these flat representatives.
So funny. I love that. Yeah.
And unable to say anything but stock cliche dialogue. And then when she disappeared, they go, my God, what was that?
Yeah, that's amazing.
My God, Holmes, why was I talking like that? It's Mary Sue Watson. Don't say the name.
And then she appears. Yeah.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. But we've been talking about Trekkies and whether or not the Trek culture is a cult. And come to the conclusion, cult, yes, destructive cult, no. And I think we can leave that there, but we will probably be talking about Voyager and various other geeky properties.
Films and the like as well, yeah.
Leave your suggestions in the comments below. We'll do anything but Twilight and 50 Shades. It's been great talking to you. I'm Spike Robinson, and this is my friend Monia. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.
Hi, John here. Thanks for watching. We'd appreciate it very much if you would click like, as well as subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Every dollar helps, and we welcome new patrons on Patreon, or you can make a one-off payment with any currency through PayPal. Thanks so much.
Everybody loves you.